default Neverwinter Nights, shifters are they're almost kind of broken in a way. You get a certain number of shifts per day, and you get a certain number of uses of things, and that's just kind of how it works. Well, on Higher Ground, our great, amazing coders, Funky Swerve and Cows, worked together and created lots of different modifications, and on the shifter, we created actually a lot of extra shapes. So if you look through, these are the shifter shapes. So we have the first set are what we call Wild Shape, Greater Wild Shape 1, Wormling Shape. So Wormling is this little guy right here. So it's a baby dragon. And I have this big kind of glowy tail growing on because I have something called a focus in that particular shape. So shifters currently on Higher Ground are kind of like our casters. You can take form focus like a caster would take focus in a particular spell school. So I have a focus in dragon, so this benefits from dragon focus. So this little guy can breathe fire. So we can kill monsters by breathing fire. The neat thing about Wormling Shape is it actually inflicts the enemies with a weakness to the particular element of dragon that you have. So originally there weren't as many colors as we have, so shapes have actually been added. So you had red, blue, and green. So we also have black and white. So this is a Higher Ground custom shape. So I can show you here to go somewhere where there's actually monsters. So instead of having number of uses, you may notice up here this is due to an overlay called Higher Ground Extender. This is not essential for HG. You can get it. It's free, but it actually keeps track of your essence points up here. So that tells you how many breaths or whatever your abilities are, how many you have left. So I can go out here. These are very low level zombies. I think they're actually probably cold immune, but I'm going to breathe on them anyway. Okay, I guess I was wrong. So I can, of course, melee as well. And melee is not very good. So this AC may look pretty good if you've played Neverwinter Nights kind of default or on another server. It's pretty good. For level 80 and a low-level shape, that's pretty good as far as AC goes. So we have, this is Greater Wormling Shape, so we have red, blue, black, white, and green. And green has a special ability. It actually reduces, I forget what it does. Kill these guys. It's a poison, so it causes their damage on attacking you to be decreased. So it's the only one that doesn't actually do damage. It has just an infliction. And this overlay up here is also due to HG Enhanced, which this is down here as well. Like I said, that's an extra program. You don't have to use that. So the next group of shapes, and as you're leveling, when you start taking shifter levels, these are the first shapes that you get. Then you get these shapes and other shapes. So over here we have Harpie Shape, which is hideous. Hideously ugly. It's a very ugly shape, but very useful. In the default, it had something called Charm Song, which on Higher Ground is really not very useful. So what it has here is actually a Bard Curse Song. So essentially, Harpie can a shifter can kind of serve as a bard. It's not a very good bard, but you can at least curse monsters. So it's a default level 50 song for what we get. So that's one of our most important shapes from that level. So there's also Gargoyle Shape, which is mostly a melee shape. It doesn't really have any abilities down here. I have something called a Quick Book, shape, QB poly, which has to do with your polymorph abilities get put into these quick bars down here automatically as you change shapes. So it doesn't really have a shape, so any abilities, so it's just a melee shape. And shifter melee is okay, so you can build around it, but that's not usually what I use. So we have Minotaur shape. There's another melee shape, but it does have this rage ability, which is basically a bonus to melee. It's kind of like barbarian rage. But it also has, this is actually maze. And a maze spell, find some more monsters here. A maze spell can actually, one thing I should say is Higher Ground, even though it is multiplayer, it's really not, there is kind of structured PvP, but it's really not much of, it's not very important on Higher Ground. It's kind of difficult to do because of the way the ABs and the ACs have worked. You just kind of end up swinging at each other and not really killing each other most of the time. So most of the multiplayer is cooperative. I go down here. Find some monsters to beat up. So this is zombie, so I can maze him. So maze is actually a D&D spell that we added. And it keeps that monster away. Basically, they're stuck in here. Enemy monsters can also do this to you in higher level areas. So what will happen, unless I cancel it early, is it'll just keep him there for a while. Essentially, the idea is the creature is in a maze in its own mind, and then comes down, and it'll come back out. So as Minotaur, you really only get one maze per shift. So you can shift. You notice my essence points are down to 15. But if I shift again, they'll actually go back up. So this is what happens on these unlimited forms. So now my essence points are back. Now my maze is cancelled and Mr. Zombie is back. So that's the Minotaur shape. Don't really use it too much, but it could be strategically used. Fairy shape. This is a custom shape. Minotaur is default, although they don't have the maze ability in default Neverwinter Nights. So you can actually get Fairy as a sub-race on Higher Ground, which is really, really tiny, even though in the game they're actually only counted as small. So they have an ability called Spill Potion. So if an enemy monster has a heal potion, you can actually get rid of it. So it's mostly a melee shape. Other than Spill Potion, I don't really use it too much. So Troll's another one. It just has really high regen. And mine actually, they change appearances. As I mentioned, you can focus in these shapes. And the appearance of these shapes actually changes when you take focus in them. So Troll is basically another melee shape. You notice it doesn't have any abilities down here. It's just got the old ones from the last shape grayed out. So it's an unarmed shape. And I believe it has really high regen. That's pretty much it. So pretty much for that level, you're looking at mostly Harpie Shape is what's being used. So Greater Wild Shape, this is Greater Wild Shape 3. We have the Basilisk. Very important shape as far as in Higher Ground. Unfortunately, I'm facing zombies. I'm sure they're all death immune, which they are. So this is actually a death gaze. So anything that is not death immune can be killed by this. So unfortunately it's a cone attack, so you have to be kind of in front, and you get basically a little triangle of death. So I will spawn something just to demonstrate this. So this is a test monkey, so he has no immunities to anything. So you notice my DC is 62, which is pretty close to maximum that's available here. So, of course, I'm level 80. I have pretty much maximum possible on pretty much everything. So that's Basilisk. This is Drider Shape. And they were nice enough to make female Driders for my female shifter. Originally, you just change into whatever. And I believe this shape is actually permanently knockdown immune. And if you have focus, you can cast IGMs, which are Isaac's Greater Missile Storm. And also here on Higher Ground, you may notice here, instead of magic on default Neverwinter, that's what you would get. We get something called force damage. So we've added a bunch of different damage types, some of which have basis in lore. Some of them are just ways of basically avoiding immunities and resists that people have. So IGMs are really, they're not always that useful, but because they have that unique damage type, they're a little more useful than they ordinarily would be. There's also a web, entangle your opponents, and again, like most of the wild shapes, your essence points are essentially unlimited. So if you just reshift until this, your essence points come back, which is nice. Go a little deeper, see what else we can find in here. So the next shape is the Manticore, and Manticore has gone through all different kinds of modifications. The default looks a little different from this, so this again has changed appearance. So it basically has spikes, which are a ranged touch attack, and as you level on HG, you get more and more spikes. It's also true for default Neverwinter Knights. And this can be a very useful shape if you have a monster that really doesn't have immunity to piercing damage. But it doesn't always get used too much. So it's Manticore. Wyvern. So this is actually, your stats change with each shape. So this one is actually a dex tank. So it has really high dexterity. So if you need to tank something that has really high dex, has a high dex check or something like that, you can use this. And of course I can't fit through this door, which is one of the problems of being a shifter. Fortunately, I can just reshift. So it has two major abilities. It has a poison sting. Unfortunately, I'm so high level I can just kill these with one hit. So poison. These guys are probably immune to poison. So there's something called Snatch, where you can actually pick these guys up and chuck them, which damages them. And if it doesn't kill them, it will actually knock them down. So this is a really fun shape. This is another one of the Higher Ground custom shapes. So this one is Zorn, which I really don't use too much because it doesn't have any other abilities, but it does have a stoning on hit. Apparently the ability of this particular monster in Dungeons & Dragons. Unfortunately, I'm probably going to kill all these guys with one hit. Let's see if I can take my weapon off. So I won't kill them quite so much. I'm still killing them. Let's go back to our Zorn. Nope, still killing them. Anyway, it does stone monsters if you don't kill them immediately. There's a save associated with it. I'll see if I can spawn one to demonstrate that. There's our test monkey. Oh, there it goes. So you notice there's my DC there. 61, and he's turned to stone. So then we can go back to Mr. Manticore and finish him off. Ta-da! Okay, so the next group of shapes, these are humanoid shapes. Now, I don't have focus in these. Well, actually, I do. I have a single focus in these. This one is the Dro Warrior, and depending on whether you're a male or female shifter, you'll turn out to be one or the other. This is actually a Loth appearance from the original campaign. And this character, this ability, this shape, I should say, has a couple of abilities. One of them is they can restore themselves, and she can cast darkness. The other thing that Drow has is it actually has what we call a Mortal Strike, which is kind of like devastating critical old school Neverwinter Nights, or original Neverwinter Nights, which has actually been modified here. Devastating critical doesn't do the same thing. We have specific classes that can do that. So I will spawn another test monkey here, just to demonstrate it. Kill him off before I Mortal Strike him. Ugh. Okay, let's try again. Nope. Oh, there, he succeeded! He rolled a 20! Ah. Alright, we'll try something a little tougher. I will spawn something from one of the hells. And I can do this because I'm a DM. This is for demonstration purposes. So my DC is only 52 because I only have one focus in this shape. So the DC is not very good. Oh, but he rolled low enough that I got him anyway. So you can build your character any way you want on Higher Ground. You can choose to focus in any of these shapes if you like one or you like another. This one is Lizard Folk, so he has a whip, and this ability is similar to one of the quasi-classes that we've created, which is called a Lash of Hatred. And what the Lash of Hatred can do is it can actually inflict, in the case of the Lash, favored enemies with penalties, different types of negative penalties. So I will show you with something a little tougher than what we have. I'll spawn another Lemur. You can see here, so you notice it's got damage immunity, cold, electrical, and sonic. So those are things that it's weak to. It also reduces the skill, or at least it should. It doesn't do that. Only the original Lash does that. But it inflicts them. Basically so that it helps the damage of the other people in your party. So the abilities of humanoid shapes, they all have something called Lesser Body Adjustment, which allows you to do Restore, which is really important on Higher Ground because there is a lot of infliction that goes on. Enemy monsters will inflict you with different types of penalties, skill penalties, all sorts of things. So the next one is the Kobold. And in default Neverwinter Night, this particular shape had a bunch of skill bonuses having to do with unlocking and disarming traps, which is really stupid because you can't actually use lockpicks when you're shifted. You cannot use items when you're shifted. So what we gave them is something called Rogue's Cunning, which is kind of this crazy, it's a fairly powerful trap. And you basically set it, and it inflicts as well as causes acid damage. And again, my DC is not very high because compared to my other forms because I only have a single focus in this. So that one's very popular, very useful. Oops, I'm the wrong one. The last one is Sahagwan, and this is essentially, we have some enemies like this, basically fish people, more or less. And there's basically web, and again, the normal lesser body adjustment. The other thing that, remember I said that generally speaking you cannot use items, so the lesser body adjustment lets you use any restoration item that you have. So for example, on Higher Ground we have something called pearls. Let's see if I can find them. So these are called Saint's Blood Pearls, and they have restoration. So if I tried to use this on myself, I can't use that item. But if I do lesser body adjustment, I can use that item, so indirectly. So the other thing that you can do as long as you have some focus in Humanoid Shape, you can actually use this special ability, which we have on Higher Ground, called Assist Other. So if somebody is dead, which happens a lot on Higher Ground, and since we're a high magic server, there's a lot of resurrection that goes on. So you can use this Assist Other. You basically click on somebody and it will actually resurrect them. Since I don't have anybody in party right now, I can't really do that. Demonstrate that, but it's really nice. So that's Humanoid Shape. So the next shape, this is again Wild Shape, and when you focus in Wild Shape, all of these greater Wild Shapes, except for the first one, benefit from Wild Shape focus. So this is a default one, although the appearance has changed. This is called Dire Tiger. It's one of the models that hasn't aged quite as well as some of the others. So it has something called a knockdown. So you can shadow attack, and you can actually knock down a lot of different kinds of monsters. So this is another melee form. I don't use quite so much, so it's a touch attack. And if the monster isn't knockdown immune, you can knock them down. But it's really fun. Just run around in town and stalk low-level peoples as a tiger. That's the main thing I use it for. Medusa. This is probably one of the original forms and one of the best shapes that shifters have. And Medusa, of course, if you know any mythology, could turn people to stone. And that's exactly what this shape does. So anything that's not immune to petrification, boom, stoned in a cone, which is great. It's really, really useful shape. It's one of the most important things shifters can do on Higher Ground. There's a lot of things that are stonable. Next up is Mind Flayer. So Mind Flayers is probably not going to work, because these guys are all... Yeah, see, they're all immune to mind spells, so it doesn't work. Which is annoying. But we will, again, spawn another test monkey. So this guy is not immune. So if you have something that's not mind immune, it will stun them. And then as you continue to hit them, it does this special damage. So this is one of these unusual damage types that's added on Higher Ground called Psionic. And it does quite a bit. So you keep them stunned, and you kill them. It's great. One of my favorite forms. Original default form, but has been modified also to do the psionic damage. So next one, this is Beholder. This is one of the forms that was added on Higher Grounds, and it has 3 different abilities. Very, very commonly used form. First one is something called the Ante Magic Cone. So if you're familiar with D&D, you know that Beholders do this a lot. It's very annoying. They do this, and default never when I write enemy Beholders can do this. So you don't want to do this to your party members, so you have to be very careful. So then we have 2 rays. We have the Inflict Wounds ray, which does negative. So this is a touch attack. And then we have another one, the Frost ray, which does cold. So both of those are very, very useful abilities. And again, like the other wild shapes, this is an unlimited shape. Last one here, this is Gelatinous Queue, which may be somewhat famous in D&D circles for taking people's weapons, and that's exactly what this particular shape does. Pretty much, if you're going to use this, the whole thing about it is to disarm something. So let's see if I can disarm one of these guys, even though they're stoned. And he failed, but I guess since he's stoned, he can't really see it. Alright, let's see if I can spawn something a little stronger. Let's see, so I need to find my Harpie. Hopefully I don't get killed. So I will be spawning here a Pit Fiend, which is from the 9 Hells. These are our modified Pit Fiends, not default Neverwinter Nights Pit Fiends, which are really nasty. And hopefully it won't kill me. Fortunately, because this is Path of Ascension and the whole point of the mod is to become immortal, even if I get killed, I will actually get back up after a time. In fact, I'm one beyond immortality on this character. I have something called Demigod. So at least in this area, although in some areas I can't die. Okay, so we gotta get to Mr. Gelatinous Queue. See if we can disarm Mr. Pit Fiend. He's hitting me. I got him! So you notice now he does not have a sword anymore. So he can't really hurt me. At least not very much. So now what we're gonna do, he could still kill me, is I'll go back to Beholder. So he's blinded me, that's one of the Pit Fiend's special abilities. Apparently I've slowed him also. That's really cool, I did not know that the cube would also slow. So the way Pit Fiends are vulnerable to cold, so now that I've effectively kept him from hurting me, I'm just going to hit him with ice, so you can basically see what that is. Anyway, I'll get rid of him. So now, of course, I have blindness and deafness, which is really annoying. So I can, of course, just shift to my Drow and use muscle body adjustment. So, pretty cool. Okay, so that was all of Greater Wild Shapes. So now we move on to shapes that actually have to be taken as feats. So we have Construct Shape, there's also Undead Shape, Outsider Shape, and Dragon Shape. In default Neverwinter Nights, you really didn't have much else to take because there were no form focus feats. Those are things that we've added at Higher Ground. So now that we have those feats, it makes these shapes more powerful, but you can't really take all of them. So my chosen shapes are Dragon and also Construct Shapes. And I have other characters that have some of the other shapes. So this one is Stone Golem. So Stone Golem is one of my favorites. Very, very useful shape because it does a lot of damage, specifically bludgeoning damage by throwing rocks. So we go into something called Siege Mode, and this actually increases the damage but keeps you from moving. So you notice these guys over here, I'm going to throw a rock, and that guy just took 500 damage. It's a small area of effect. Eat my rocks, and they're toast. This is really great for a lot of bosses and certain monsters that are vulnerable to bludgeoning. And these numbers may seem really high, but this is a very low-level area. In the higher level areas, this is really what you need to survive. So that's Stone Golem. Then we have Demon Flesh Golem, which is one of my favorites because I think it looks really cool. This is a model from CEP. The original Demon Flesh Golem is bigger and it looks kind of not quite as cool. But it has an ability, this aura of protection. You can actually give yourself immunity to pretty much any elemental type that you want by using what we call a Sim Tools command. You actually have to type that in. So it uses essence points while I do that. These shapes are also not unlimited in essence points. To get more, I actually have to rest. So we have the Shadow Attack, and we also have Rage, much like we saw with the Minotaur. So I don't even know where I am in this place. Guess I should go down a level, because I'm sure I'm running out of monsters here. So this is mostly a melee shape. The nice thing about constructs is they're pretty much all critical hit immune. So this particular persistent world actually critical hits. It's on, I forget what the actual difficulty level is, but it's basically the next to the hardest one, so the monsters can actually critical hit you. So it's very important for a lot of classes to have some access to critical hit immune. So these are haunted armors, so I can beat them up pretty well. Some people focus on this shape as a melee shape. If you take monk levels, you can actually get monk progression in your attacks. But unlike most default Neverwinter Knights, you don't get, if you take Splash Monk, your Wisdom doesn't give you any more AC, so, which is why I don't have a Monk Splash. Instead, I took a Ranger Splash for a number of skill bonuses that are actually very important on this server. Specifically, Discipline. Discipline is very important here. Bad things can happen to you if you have low discipline. Parry's another one, actually reduces the damage from critical hits on this server. So Tumble also gives you AC, which is default Neverwinter Nights behavior, but there's a way to get to Tumble using feats, but that's kind of a different discussion than just Shifter. Okay, so our next is Iron Golem. This is probably the most popular shifter shape in general because it has something called poison gas. So anything that's not poison immune can actually be insta-killed by this. I think the haunted armors are all poison immune, of course. Should have picked somewhere else to go mess around. They're not petrification immune. So let's see. So this is also my quick bar, which kind of tells you that I use it a lot. So let's see. I'm going to spawn another monster from the Hells. This one's called an Amnesia. So this one is really nasty in that it can cause something called amnesia, which means if you're a caster or if you're a shifter, you can forget all your spells. But one of the other nice things about Construct Shape is you're completely immune to amnesia as long as you're in Construct Shape. So you notice those green pulses, those are being poisoned. So you have to succeed at least twice to kill a monster using poison. And some monsters are poison immune, as are these guys. So the next shape is something called Crystal Golem. I use this one the least. It has an aura. I actually forget what this aura does. No, that's actually... I think this one gives you positive immunity. And this is actually a shield, a kickback shield. And this is a true spell. So unfortunately that means that you have to make a spell resistance check, which is kind of annoying. Which is one of the reasons I don't use these too much. But I did take... Actually, I used an item to get Epic Spell Penetration. But it's not really... We have legendary focuses, and so my spell penetration is not that good. So it's not the best form in the whole world. Now this form right here, this is probably the second most popular of the construct shapes. This and Prismatic Golem are both modifications added by Higher Ground, so they're not found in default Neverwinter Nights. So you notice that I have an electric pulse that I can do, which does a fair amount of damage. And the other thing there is something called the grapple chain, and this can actually cause paralysis and a monster that's not immune. And of course these guys are. Oops. Let's spawn our test monkey. And now he can't move. He's actually paralyzed. So you can actually use this on a lot of monsters. It's very useful. Test monkeys have a lot of hit points. Makes it easy to test things. So my last form focus that I have is Dragon. And default Neverwinter Nights dragons are actually bigger than this. You increase in size as you take focus in them at Neverwinter Nights. I mean on Higher Ground. So I have two abilities. Dragon Breath is default, but I also have a Wing Buffet. So as you notice, I knock down all of these guys with a really high DC. So in some cases, there are actually monsters on this server where this will actually kill them. The Gust will. And of course you can also breathe fire all over them, which is fun. So that's Red Dragon. You also get blue and black. Those three are blue. Red, blue, and green are default in Neverwinter Nights. But as we have added, we also added... Oops, that's Wormling. We also added... So red, blue, and green, these are default. Then white and silver are the ones that we have. So you get white. So of course you can guess what white breathes. Cold. It has knockdown like all the other dragons. And of course it couldn't fit. I actually have these hot slotted. So here's our white dragon. And here's some monsters I can breathe on. Which is pretty cool. And then the other really neat one that you get is Sonic Dragon. So you get Silver Dragon, which breathes Sonic. You get Sonic damage, you still get Wing Buffet like all the other dragons. And that's what you get. So on this character, this is all that I have. So you can also, as I mentioned, you can focus on Undead and also Outsider, which I have on other characters, which I will probably be showing you in an upcoming video. So these are what my stats look like. So this is for level 80. This is the amount of XP that you